Grab your favorite beverage. It's time for the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast.
Fantasy freaks and geeks, what is up? Welcome to Season 1 of the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast, aka formerly known as the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. We are reaching out on our own. We've grown our wings and we've flown off from the Dudes and Beer Podcast. We're very happy that we were able to get the season going last year, but this year is a new year. So I'm here with Adam Natras. If you're a returning listener, you will recognize the voice. Adam, say hi to our fans.
It's good to be back. Season upon us. Can't wait. It feels like, even though the NFL's 12 months, my God, it always seems like a long summer.
Yeah, dude. Our fantasy baseball has been able to help keep me floating, but you really laid one on me last week, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a hollowed sport for us Phillies and Mets fans, but we pretend that it keeps us away from the need and desire.
We're just waiting for football season.
The king of them all.
Yeah. So this year it's going to be a little different from last year if you are a returning listener. Last year it was just a one episode a week type of thing. This year I'm going to really try and do 2 episodes a week. I'm going to try and do, on Tuesday nights we're going to recap the week before, go over injuries from the week before. We're going to do our Cheers to You, Pour One Out section in honor of Paul, who isn't going to be able to join us this year, but he'll be with us eventually. We'll probably also do the daily fantasy segment, which Adam, you were going to definitely be very valuable for that.
We're going to try and win some money this year.
Yeah, and then we're going to probably do a small little 3-team parlay of the week with one of my friends, Chris, who's an avid football bettor, so we're going to get him on here as well. So that'll probably be on Tuesdays, and then we'll finish up the Tuesday episode with a Thursday night preview. We'll look at the Thursday night game. We'll see all the matchups just like we did last year. And then the next episode, which we'll try and do on Thursday nights when we're watching the Thursday night game, but there's going to be some times where it's not going to be able to happen because of my work schedule is kind of crazy, but I'm gonna get it done whenever I can, and that's going to be all of the previews for the rest of the week. So all the Sunday games, all the Monday games, we're going to preview all those on the Thursdays. Hopefully that'll be available to you guys on Friday morning so you can listen to it at some point in the weekend, and we can hopefully help everybody win some fantasy championships.
You know what I'm hearing you say there, Matt?
What?
It sounds like that the new format is perfectly suited for everybody's commute. It sounds like Wednesday morning and Friday morning, instead of having to worry, man, I can't fit this whole thing in. Sounds perfect.
Yeah, nice. Hopefully on Tuesday we can keep it to under a half hour, and hopefully on Thursday we can keep it to under 45 minutes.
Sometimes you get that rush hour traffic, so
yeah.
We got to give you
have a little extra 10 minutes here, an extra 15 minutes here. You don't got to listen to it all at one time, and I'm hopefully going to be able to get into the description of it, where each team is. So if you're only looking for specific teams, if you're only looking for specific players, you'll be able to see where we're talking about those guys. So with our first episode here of the Beers and Bruisers, we're going to jump into what I think Adam would agree with me is the most important position in fantasy football. It's the running backs. And I'm going to start off, unfortunately, looking at the backfields that I want to avoid, at least on draft day. So, eventually throughout the season, there's going to be times on the waiver wire where some of these guys are going to become more valuable than they are on draft day, whether there's injuries, suspensions, poor play, whatever it happens to be, trades even. We saw a whole bunch of trades last year. And so the first team that I'm avoiding as far as their running backs go is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know it breaks your heart to hear me say it out there, but they have so many running backs, and they obviously like to spread the ball around to their running backs. I don't know if Doug Peterson's ever had a running back that's ever gotten, over 200 carries. I very seriously doubt he's ever been a part of a team that had that. So you're looking at Jordan Howard, who they brought on in free agency. Or no, they traded for Jordan Howard. I'm sorry. Miles Sanders, who they drafted. Josh Adams, who was a rookie last year, and he played really well. You're looking at Corey Clement, who's been on the team for a few years, and he is obviously someone that the coaching staff trusts, or else they would have gotten rid of him by now. And then you're looking at Wendell Smallwood. So you got a whole set of running backs here, Adam, and with the Eagles. I hate the headache of trying to figure out which running back is going to get the carries, which running back is going to get the touches. And I want guys that are bona fide number one running backs on their team where there's no competition for their touches. I want to know for a fact that this guy is going to get the ball. So with the Eagles, I don't see one guy. Do you?
As an Eagles fan, I'll sit there and agree with you wholeheartedly. Generally speaking, a top-tiered fantasy running back needs to be able to have the chance to be just on the field for 50-plus snaps any given week.
Right.
Not a single Eagles running back has done that in a very long time, and there's no reason to think that that's going to happen this year. So I'm 100% with you. It's going to be a headache. I love the Birds. They got a plethora, but...
And I didn't even mention Darren Sproles, who's still in camp, still playing. Yeah, so, I mean...
It's just one to... You know what? That's going to be a waiver wire special at some point. You might have someone go down and someone emerge, but I'm with you. Going into the draft, avoid.
Yeah. Now, if Jordan Howard goes down in week 3 and Miles Sanders looks, maybe not like the first and second down type of running back that they're hoping for, Josh Adams looked really good last year. He wasn't good enough to take I don't think the Eagles wanted to go into a season with him as their number one running back, but as a guy who came in and played for the last half of the year, got pretty consistent carries. He didn't look all that bad. So that's what I mean by... I'm not avoiding these guys altogether. If something happens throughout the season, you always have to be riding that waiver wire. But just as far as on draft day, I'm letting guys like Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders fall to whoever else wants to take them. The next backfield I'm avoiding is the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers. Over the past 2 years, they brought on Jerick McKinnon last year. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL, wasn't able to play at all. And then this offseason, they bring on Telvin Coleman. They've had Matt Breida there for a couple years now. He's shown to be durable enough, but he's definitely had bumps and bruises throughout that I think would make a coaching staff second guess, having him as their true number one. So, and especially on this offense, the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, the way he runs his system, pretty much every running back is going to get involved at some point in some way. I think Coleman is a good player. I just don't see him as a number one running back. Maybe that's because he's been stuck behind Devontae Freeman for the past 3 years, 4 years, whatever it's been.
I think you'd be hesitant to have to draft Coleman, depending on where. Tevin Coleman always gets picked in a weird spot. I guess if you can get him late, go for it. But I'm with you. I would just stay away. Let someone else have that headache.
We're going to talk about a strategy later that I tried out last year. I was hesitant to do it, but heard a lot about it. I tried it out last year, and it went pretty well for me. And Coleman is one of those guys that in the middle of the draft, you could maybe target in this certain type of...
If he falls late enough in anyone's draft, I guess that, anyone late enough you could justify, right? And honestly, these are teams that maybe that's where maybe that's where they end up on your team. At that point, you go for it because, but not someone that you want to rely on, right?
Yeah, and also... not to mention they have Kyle Juszczyk there, that Juszczyk, however you say it.
It's like a cult following for that dude. I don't get it.
He catches a lot of passes. He's really more of a tight end than he is a fullback, but they use him as a running back too, and he does all kinds of stuff. So that's another guy that is going to be stealing carries. It's just a backfield that, if I can avoid him, I'm going to try to avoid him. They even had two guys last year that both had pretty decent games when they got the chance. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, they both had decent games towards the end of the season last year. The next backfield I'm trying to avoid is the Buffalo Bills. They just have so many guys that are old, so many guys that are, Frank Gore he has to be the oldest running back by, 3 or 4 years?
Well, I think that with the Buffalo Bills, that it's really all you need to say. Everybody's rule of thumb since the dawn of time is you avoid the backfield that has Frank Gore.
It's true.
Am I not wrong? Like, if Frank Gore is on that backfield, avoid it.
It's an automatic headache all season long.
12 to 15 carries, good ones, are given away. So,
and I mean, LaShawn McCoy is still under contract. He's still towards the end of his prime, maybe a year or two out. But he's still going to get carries. And then, they brought on TJ Yeldon to catch passes, I'm sure. That's probably the only reason why they brought him on. The thing to me that you got to watch out for in this backfield with the Bills, it's Devin Singletary, the rookie that they drafted. If LaShawn McCoy goes out in the first couple of weeks and, doesn't really show that burst that they're expecting from him, and he, he's not performing, I can see them saying, all right, whatever, we're just going to give it to the kid. And, we'll have Frank Gore on third down and to pass protect. We'll have Shady run some screens and stuff like that. And then Yeldon can come in whenever. But
it's best to avoid the mess.
Yeah, maybe in a couple weeks into the season, I'll take a look at Devin Singletary. But on draft day, I got to avoid him. The next team I'm avoiding is the Washington Redskins. They have a very interesting crew of running backs with them. So you're looking at Darius Geis, guy drafted last year. He was projected to be one of the best rookie RBs in the class last year. Unfortunately, just like Jerick McKinnon, he tore his ACL before the season started. We weren't able to see him at all. They bring on Adrian Peterson. He puts in 250 carries. He would have been, if he played all 16 games, he probably would have been on the end of the RB2 tier.
You know what the problem with Adrian Peterson, and a good reason to your point, was last year, though? You couldn't guess. He was entirely game script. So
he had those 2 games where he had like a 60 or 70-yard run where it just completely padded his stats.
His points were inflated because the weeks that he got to him, there were other weeks that he could have just lost the game for you. So I'm with you. You just... Yeah, no reason.
And then they also have this dude, Chris Thompson, who is like...
contract year for him, too.
And he's one of those big-time pass-catching running backs that has proven for years
and he's good
that
to go.
He's reliable and he's actually healthy, which has been probably the only thing keeping him back from being a true number 2 running back. I'm looking at the Bears as
Hold
the
on.
next...
I got to take it back. One more reason as to avoid I had to say it didn't come out. A sleeper for the future.
Okay.
Coming off a knee injury like everybody else. But if you remember, Saquon Barkley's junior year, he was up against a certain player from Stanford who's now on the Washington Redskins, Bryce Love.
I was going to say him, but I was like, I don't know if it even makes sense.
I feel like you have to. A player of that caliber at one point. It's the Marcus Lattimore theory, right? Like, if you have a guy that at one point was of that caliber, there's always a chance. So it just adds to the reasoning even more. I had to say him just because I was a huge Bryce Love fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Adrian Peterson is very at the end of his career. I mean,
Chris Thompson's gone apparently, right? After this year,
and then Darius Geis, if he isn't what we're expecting from him, if he comes into this season and he's like, and he underperforms, then maybe that opens the door for Bryce Love next season.
He almost won the Heisman. He was very close. I mean, he lost out to Saquon Barkley,
to the one and only
Saquon Barkley. Exactly.
That's very interesting. I didn't think of that, but thanks for bringing that up.
It's just something to keep an eye on. I'll throw it out there. The dynasty people,
maybe towards the end of the season, check them out.
Right. If you can, I mean, just an ear to the ground.
So the next one I'm avoiding, and this one's interesting because, I mean, if it's a PPR league, I'm willing to take Tariq Cohen, but with the Bears, Matt Nagy's system, I don't think he's ever going to have a true number 1 running back either. I mean, they drafted Montgomery. They still have Tariq Cohen, and they bring on Davis from the Seahawks. Last year, Davis had 34 receptions on 42 targets for 214 yards. I think he'll take at least a chunk out of Tariq Cohen, which is why I'm like kind of hesitant about taking Cohen. But Chris Davis also had he'll probably end up taking like 60, 80 carries from Montgomery as well, because he's still going to get used in the by the goal line. I bet you if in week 1, I bet you if they get down to the goal line, if it's give the ball to the rookie or give the ball to a dude that last year proved that he can take goal line work, I bet you he comes in a couple times throughout the season.
And don't put it past Nahagi to think that you could go with a first down running back, a second down running back, and a third down running back.
And I mean, Montgomery, he seems in line to take the majority of Jordan Howard's 250 carries from last year. But is that really a number going to be? Do you think it's going to be closer to 200? Do you think it's going to be closer to 180? Like, do you really think they're going to give a rookie 250 carries? I don't see that.
And then there's always the question of when does he really get the hang of it? If
Right.
he does. So if you're going to wait, you're going to wait.
So the next team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's another team with a rookie from last year that he played, but he didn't really do much, and that's Ronald Jones. They also have a guy that's been in the league for a number of years, Peyton Barber. He actually had a significant workload with this team last year. He had 5.5 yards per reception last year as well. So when he caught the ball, he did things with it. This new coaching staff with the Buccaneers, they're bringing on Andre Ellington. He didn't play in 2018, but he's coming back and he's on the team.
You can't help but smile when you hear Andre Ellington. He's been a fantasy hopeful forever.
Yeah,
I remember 10 years ago we all got excited for him.
He's been somebody that for years and years it's been like, oh, he could do something with this team. He could do something.
Every now and then someone got rewarded for a few weeks when someone got hurt, and Andre Ellington came in and did something.
So Ronald Jones was probably the biggest disappointment last year, right? He was thought to be one of the best running backs in the class again.
I would say him and Rashad Penny were on par, wouldn't you? I mean, but the two of them weren't they kind of neck and neck for where they were drafted, where they were projected, and what kind of happened?
I don't remember specifically, any kind of tiers as far as those rookie RBs went, but I just remember them saying like, this dude's going to be great, and it just didn't happen.
A lot of excitement behind him.
And although the offensive line was one of the worst in the league last year, I mean, Peyton Barber still played and he put up decent numbers. He wasn't great, but he put up numbers that make you say, okay, he is a startable RB in a 12-team league, right? And then this Arians offense, so I went back and I looked. He's always been about 60% pass to 40% run. In 2015, his offense had the most run-heavy year. It was in Arizona when he ran the ball 44% of the time. That was the most out of all his years as a head coach and an offensive coordinator. And it was when they had the rookie David Johnson and the last productive year out of Chris Johnson. You remember that season?
Oh yeah.
So I mean, Ronald Jones could become one of the best value picks in the draft if he comes out and has a decent year, an 8 to 900 yard rushing season. I think for a guy that you can get in the 8th, 9th round, Ronald Jones,
throw the dart,
right? And that's what I'm saying. Like it's a possibility, but it's just it's a risk that I'm not willing to take on draft day. No. If he gets drafted in the 10th round and after 2 or 3 weeks he's not all that great and somebody drops him and then week 5 he has a great week, I'm probably going to pick him up just to see if maybe he turned the corner, And I mean, you don't get drafted in the first round as a running back or as a second round, whenever he was drafted. You don't draft somebody like that high as a running back and then not use them. So I know it's a new coaching staff. I just don't get how you can, as a front office, you can take a guy and then not be like, we got to at least give this dude a chance to earn, make us not look like idiots. So as I teased before, as I mentioned, there's a draft strategy that I think we went over a little bit last season. I'm not sure, but I really want to go back to it, and that's the zero RB strategy. So I've heard a lot about it for the past couple of years. I was really hesitant to try it because the concept of not taking a running back until the 5th round.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
terrifying.
5th or 6th round if you're going to play it a certain way. But so I went back and I looked at the top 2 rounds from last year. So the top 24 picks in ADP according to Fantasy Pros, which is the fantasy site that I use for looking at the ADP. They're really great. They take a pool in from all the top fantasy sites and they pool them all together and they give you a average draft position of each player, from all the sites combined. So in the top 24 picks last year, so the top 2 rounds of a 12-team league, right, there was 14 running backs that went in those top 24 picks. In my opinion, 6 of them were busts. And 4 of them were without a doubt busts. 2 of them are kind of questionable. You can argue them if you really want to. So to me, out of the 14 running backs that were selected, The 6 that were not bust, or the 8 that were not bust, were obviously Todd Gurley, David Johnson, Zeke Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Melvin Gordon, Christian McCaffrey, and Joe Mixon. Those were the eight that they were worth their top two round ADP
until you got to the playoffs with Todd Gurley.
With a lot of them. And then you're looking at the 6 busts. So to me, the 6 guys that without a doubt were busts are Le'Veon Bell because he didn't even play.
Oh yeah, that was the biggest one.
Kareem Hunt because he got suspended halfway through the season. Leonard Fournette and Devontae Freeman was also obviously a bust because he only played in 2 or 3 games. So those are the 4 definites: the Bell, the Hunt, the Freeman, and Dalvin Cook because he played in he missed 2 or 3 games at a time. He was a headache, and then like I said, Kareem Hunt and Jordan Howard was also another guy that I consider him to have been a bust. He was not worth a second-round pick, in my opinion. Just looking at these running backs that you're going to end up taking in the top 24 picks, right? Chances are at least 5 of them are going to bust. So a third of those picks are going to bust. And when you're playing in a full-point PPR league, and you have, let's say, a middle to a late pick in the draft, right? So you're picking 6, 7, or even up to 10, 11, even 12. If you go with your first 5 picks, the traditional, zero RB strategy, your first 5 picks, you're going to take 3 wide receivers, 1 of the top tight ends, and hopefully one of, if not the best quarterback, right? So last year I tried it, and I went Antonio Brown in the first round, Keenan Allen in the second round, and Zach Ertz in the third round. That was probably one of the most potent 1-2-3s. If you look back at our league, the point spreads and all that. And as far as your top 3 picks, I'm willing to bet I was in one of the top tiers as far as getting the most fantasy points out of your top 3 picks. Now, this is a full PPR, so obviously the receivers are a little more valuable, right? So I was going to try it out, go, receiver, tight end, receiver, quarterback. But in the 4th round, I kind of freaked out, and I was like, I need to take a running back here. So I screwed up, and I took the biggest headache of the season for me, which was Alex Collins in the 4th round. And looking back, if I didn't take Alex Collins and I stuck to my guns and said, I'm trying this draft strategy out, you're looking at players that were available to me in the 4th round, such as Juju Smith-Schuster, Alshon Jeffrey, Golden Tate was available. There was a couple other guys. But, I mean, if I had went Juju instead of Alex Collins there, and I rolled into every single week with Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Keenan Allen as my top 2 receivers and my flex, and then I had Zach Ertz in my tight end spot, I'm catching the most passes every week by far.
At which point would you have made a monster trade for Ben Roethlisberger? I mean, at this point, you're just betting on him every game anyways, right?
Yeah, true. With those 2 receivers.
Right.
And then in the 6th round, I went Will Fuller, so I got my 3rd wide receiver there.
He was good until he was hurt, too.
He was. And then I went running backs. So my first running back taken was in the 7th round, Tariq Cohen. He had a great year. Caught a lot of passes. I think he ended up catching the 2nd or 3rd most passes amongst running backs. He was great. I then went with Jamal Williams, which doesn't sound like all that big of a pick, but if you remember last year, Aaron Jones was suspended the first 2 weeks of the year. So my plan was that I was going to lock down the Green Bay backfield by taking Jamal Williams in the 8th round and then hope that Aaron Jones was available in the 10th or 11th, which is exactly what happened. So, like I said, my 2nd running back taken was Jamal Williams in the 8th round. My 3rd RB was Chris Carson in the 9th round. Now, I got lucky there because he finished as a top 24 running back. He was great. So I obviously hit on some value with him and with Tariq Cohen. Then in the 10th round, I went with Mike Williams, who ended up being an awesome red zone target. He caught a bunch of touchdowns for me. He was a pretty solid 4th wide receiver for me. And then, like I said, in the 11th round, I went Aaron Jones. So I pretty much throughout the entire season, my running backs were Collins, Tariq Cohen, Chris Carson, and Aaron Jones. And I was playing the matchups and I was doing pretty well. And to be able to get, 2 starting caliber running backs that you can play every week in the middle of the draft, it worked out pretty well. 12th round, I kind of blew it with D.D. Westbrook. And then, obviously you got to take your kicker and your defense at some point. So I went DST in the 13th, kicker in the 14th, and then my last pick was Austin Eckler, who ended up being a pretty solid RB4 for me as well. So, I mean, this strategy only works really if it's in my opinion, if it's a full point PPR, if you're picking towards the middle or the end of the round, where you miss out on one of those top 4 or 5 running backs. And also you kind of have to hit on those middle round running backs. You kind of have to find those gems, the diamonds in the rough that are going to be playable for you and get points for you throughout the season. So yeah, I'm going to do it again this year. I'm in a full point PPR, and I'm picking towards the end of the round. So this year I looked at full PPR ADP according to Fantasy Pros, and let's say in the first round, you miss out on all those top running backs, but you're picking. So let's say you're picking from the 6th slot of a 12-team league, right? So you're going in the first round, most likely DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams is going to be available to you. Sound appealing as a number 1 pick to you in a full point PPR league?
I'm just saying, if you get a Devontae Adams in a full point PPR league, that's best player available at that point, right?
Oh yeah,
and that's as good as any running back. I mean, obviously you got your elite, but those top tiered receivers, I mean, they're as consistent as you can get.
Right, and then
they're more consistent.
With your second pick, you go after a guy like either Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, or Keenan Allen as a number 2 receiver. I mean, it worked out great for me last year. That would be pretty sweet. And then if you don't want to take a wide receiver there, if you kind of are looking at the wide receivers that you're going to be able to take in the 3rd and 4th round, and you want to take one of the top tier tight ends like Zach Ertz, you can take him in the 2nd round and then come back in the 3rd round, and you'll still most likely be able to pick between the 2 receivers in Minnesota, between Thielen and Diggs, Amari Cooper or T.Y. Hilton. So you're talking about having, 2 solid wide receivers and a tight end. And like I said, if you let's say you do go wide receiver in the 2nd round, you don't want to take Ertz there, and you want to take Kittle in the 3rd round. I think starting a season with Hopkins and then one of Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, and then George Kittle as your tight end, that's a pretty solid 1, 2, 3. And then in the 4th round, you most likely be able to take one of the Rams guys, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, maybe even Brandon Cooks if he falls. You can take Kenny Galladay, might have a big season there, and Chris Godwin, who I think is going to be awesome this year too. So one of those guys as your 3rd wide receiver, that's pretty awesome, man. In a full point PPR, to have 3 legitimate wide receivers and a top 3 tight end, you're going to be catching a lot of passes every week. You're going to be up in the top as far as receptions go, and when it's full point PPR, you can't underestimate the value of catching passes in those leagues.
I think I couldn't agree more. I think the whole point of the 0 RB strategy is that it's a situational thing, right? But what it really is and what it's telling you in that situation is you're staying true to the goal of your fantasy team. Most points. Your goal is the most points. It's not most points spread out amongst the position. It's not who's got the best looking, every position looks the best. It's who gets the most points.
Right.
And if you're at the end of the draft, maybe the middle point, like you said, it's how you get the most points. These top-tiered receivers, how you slot them, I think you'd be pretty set. And in the NFL today, that ball's in the air an awful lot.
Yes. Yeah, and if you're looking at taking a quarterback, if you want to play like the traditional 0 RB strategy where you go after one of those top quarterbacks, the philosophy is if you have a top 3 quarterback, a top 3 tight end, and 3, let's say top 30 wide receivers or top 25 wide receivers, you're everything except for running back is pretty stacked, and you're going to score a lot of points in every one of those spots.
Right. The theory is that they all set, right? You're going to get the points you need.
So to me, yeah, you can go after a Aaron Rodgers or a Baker Mayfield here in the 5th round, but the value of quarterbacks in the late round is just so amazing. To me, it's just as much of the value of those top tier running backs. I mean, if you can get a top 10 quarterback in the 10th, 12th round, it's just incredible value considering how many good quarterbacks there's going to be.
And the difference between 1 and 10 is so minuscule in that specific position that it's actually kind of laughable, right? I mean, if you
I don't know if I'd say that, because Patrick Mahomes down to who was 10, maybe Matt Ryan. That's a pretty big jump.
It might not be, though, if you're talking the difference between points and rounds. The points per round difference in drafted. I bet you it's not as far off as the difference of their projected.
That'd be a nice little percentage equation to figure out. But
also, just a hot take. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the exact same quarterback that we saw last year. So
I don't know how you could possibly do that again.
You can't.
So let's say you're in the 5th round and you've already got your 3 receivers and your tight end, and you're like, yeah, I could go after a quarterback and kind of fulfill this whole zero RB thing. For me, I'm not doing it. I'm waiting to take a quarterback later. I have a guy that I'm targeting in the 10th or 11th round, wherever I feel like I have to get him, depending on how quarterbacks are going, and I'll get to him in a couple rounds. But now is the time where you start targeting your running backs. So if you're picking in the middle of the 5th round, right, you're looking at most likely a guy like David Montgomery is going to be available.
I think if David Montgomery, I know we said avoiding backfields, but here's the deal. If you're going with the zero RB strategy, to Matt's point, at this point you're going volume and you need to hit on a guy.
Yeah.
David Montgomery is the guy that you could roll the dice on and potentially end up with a top 12 running back at the end of the season. Why? Matt Nagy has raved about him and has come out and said, I think this guy's going to be a 3-down running back. Mike Davis is going to get the goal line touches, I'm sure, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this kid has the potential to give them a 3-down back, and then they can use Tyreek Cohen, Weapon X style all
right.
over, and that's what they want to do with him.
Kyle Juszczyk style.
That's exactly what I. Yes, Kyle. Yep. Nope. Couldn't make a better comparison.
2 completely different body
Right.
types, but they definitely would be used very similarly.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of slot play personally at Tyreek Cohen if it worked out that David Montgomery could handle the load.
If they're in a man coverage situation and they split out Tyreek Cohen, that linebacker is going to have to he's going to have to get some clean underwear, because that's not a fun guy to cover.
Right.
So yeah, you take somebody like that, and then even in the 6th round, his teammate Tyreek Cohen, I think that's still in a full point PPR. Again, this is only in full point PPR. A guy like Tyreek Cohen or even Austin Eckler that's going to catch a lot of passes. And Austin Eckler has extreme value right now because of a different situation, which we will get to. But he is clearly worth it in the 6th round right now, especially in a full point PPR and especially in a draft strategy like this. But even guys like Rashad Penny,
Kenyon
Drake, like you were talking about.
Kenyon Drake. I mean, last year we were talking about this earlier. Kenyon Drake. If Frank Gore lost 50% of his snaps, his touches to Kenyon, just half, Kenyon Drake would have ended up as a top 12 fantasy running back. And PPR specifically, he's a great receiver. The Dolphins' offense looks terrible. They're just going to dump him the ball a lot. So if you're getting him in the 6th or 7th round, I think you have a chance of being in a pretty good position.
He seems like one of those guys that's going to have half of his production being garbage time.
And I had him last year, and it sucked. But I stand by my thought. You get him there, you might be okay.
Okay.
Their whole game is going to be garbage time, so yeah.
Yeah, right. If you're picking in the 7th round a guy, I know we were just talking about, at least I was talking about avoiding the Eagles' backfield, but this is obviously different if you're going 0 RB, because in the middle rounds is when you have to get your running back, so you got to take the guys with upside. And Miles Sanders could be one of those guys. I really don't think Jordan Howard is their long-term plan. I don't think he's even going to get through the entire season as their quote-unquote number 1 running back, if there is such a thing in Philadelphia. So one of those, a guy like him as your 3rd running back who could have big games, could have bad games, he could have frustrating games, but he definitely has the upside to becoming a legit running back, does he not?
Absolutely. Same thing. It's the same theory as why we said David Montgomery. At this point, you're going volume and potential. He's got that potential.
The next running back that I'm looking to target in the middle round of a full point PPR, if you're going 0 RB, is Latavius Murray. I mean, to get a guy in the 8th round or 9th round who is going to most likely give you almost identical production to what we saw from Mark Ingram last year. Latavius Murray isn't suspended for the first 4 games. And I mean, this offense is so unique and so intriguing. And I mean, they have a backup quarterback that throws passes, catches passes, blocks. He's on special teams. He runs the ball at the goal line. They love to throw the ball to Michael Thomas on the goal line because he's so physical. They have one of the most unique running backs in the way that they use him. There's a lot of competition for touches on that team, but they showed last year that Mark Ingram was still well worth his 5th or 6th round ADP that he was at last year. And I mean, to get that production from a guy like Latavius Murray, who you can get in the 8th or 9th round, maybe will he be point for point as good as Ingram was last year? Probably not, but I think he's going to be pretty damn close. So he's another guy that I would feel totally comfortable with running as my 3rd running back or 4th running back on my team. And then the last running back in these middle rounds, so round 9, if you're looking in a full point PPR, you're looking at Jalen Samuels with the Steelers. Last year we saw it was just a complete and utter mess there in Pittsburgh. The offense was so in flux, but James Conner came in and he solidified at least one position for him, and he gave him real good work there. When he went down for a couple games, Jalen Samuels was pretty good. And as far as in a PPR league, I think going forward, I don't think they want to ride James Conner as much as they rode Le'Veon Bell. And as much as they rode him in the beginning season last year, I think they're going to have to take some of that workload off of him, and it's going to go to Jalen Samuels. Another reason Antonio Brown is gone, that's a lot of targets that they have to disperse around the rest of the offense. You're looking at Jesse James left, the tight end. I mean, it's not a lot, but again, it's a decent portion of the target share that's going to have to go somewhere. And this kid was a converted tight end to running back. I think he's someone that they can use as a weapon, and I think you're going to see a wrinkle in the Pittsburgh offense that we haven't seen in a while. So that kind of puts a bow on at least the group of running backs. I think it's a very doable thing. I tried it last year. I hit on a couple guys, and I also, throughout the season, I was very active on the waiver wire. I picked up Marlon Mack in the middle of the year, and I got Gus Edwards towards the end of the year. That gave me some production. But, I think it's doable, and I think if you sit down and you look at the ADP, even if you want to only look at the ADP of the site that you're going to be playing on, just to get an idea basically of what guys are going to be available to you in what rounds. Look at what pick you have. Look at those guys that are going to be available in each round and kind of plan around knowing that you're not going to take a running back till X round, whether it's 4, 5, or 6, whether you want to get a quarterback if you don't. And I think it's something that can really work in a full point PPR. I would not do this in a standard league. Honestly, I probably wouldn't even do it in a half-point PPR, but a full, definitely.
Honestly, all I'm going to end that segment with is if you're still doing a standard league, God bless you.
I'm in 2 standard leagues this year.
Don't invite me.
I joined one last year, and this is my 2nd year in that league, and then I'm joining another one this year.
Standard league is essentially saying I like my fantasy football stuck in 2003. Get with the league. That ball's in the air. Give me a point per reception.
So that's a really nice segue here to this short little list I have of guys that have significantly more value in PPR leagues than they do in standard leagues. So I think the best comparison here is the Sonny Michel, James White comparison. They play on the same team, which is even weirder. But James White is almost strictly used as a receiver out of the backfield, or even, excuse me, there's a little bit of beer burp there.
Oh, it is the Dudes and Beer podcast.
Yeah, excuse me there.
Remaining true.
Sorry. So he's pretty much only used as a receiver, and Sonny Michel is almost only used as a runner. He probably had, under 10, under 15 targets last year. He just doesn't – they don't throw him the ball. And so in this situation, Sonny Michel is obviously way more valuable in a standard league than he is in a PPR, and conversely, James White is obviously way more valuable in a PPR league than he is in a standard league. So looking at guys that are a little more available in the standard league, I think David Montgomery's value has to go up a little bit. He's going to be getting carries, and he's going to be in the mix every week. Another guy is Justin Jackson, and it's kind of more because of what's going on with Melvin Gordon. But if Melvin Gordon holds out, and you're looking at just Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler going into for the Chargers, they're probably going to be splitting carries, and there's a chance that he takes the goal line work. That is an awesome offense to be on, and especially the way that Phillip Rivers has shown us that he's comfortable using running backs, throwing him the ball, whatnot. Still, in a standard league, I think he's got to get a little uptick in value. And Chris Carson is a guy that, he was used in the passing game, but last year they mixed the ball around so much to all three of their running backs. I think this year Chris Carson, you're going to see have a little more of the running, the more carries than targets. So I think he's a little more valuable in standard leagues. Jumping over to PPR leagues, I think guys like I was just mentioning earlier, Jalen Samuels is obviously a little more valuable in PPR leagues because he is going to get targeted a lot. Another guy that's like him is Jalen Richard over with the Raiders. He was targeted and he caught a lot of passes last year. Ty Montgomery, a converted wide receiver. Naheem Hines on the Colts, he caught a lot of passes last year. Duke Johnson, who was cut, or was he traded to Houston or was he cut?
I think he was traded.
Okay. Yeah, so, a guy like him, Theo Riddick, who is now on Denver. There's a whole bunch of guys that, in a PPR league, you kind of have to look away from their names and just look at what they've done. Like Jalen Richard is a guy that is probably going to fall late in drafts, and in a PPR league, he is well worth a 10, 12 round pick.
He's definitely worth a flyer because he has a good chance to be a good flex. Like you said, he could be catching five catches a game in a PPR league starts you out at 5 points. It's not that hard to get 10 from there. 10 points a game is a good flex.
Yeah. We are up, folks. We are up here in Studio 2 of my 2-floor apartment building, and it is brutally hot today up here in the Philadelphia area. It's humid as balls outside. Me and Adam are sweating through our shirts, so we are sticking it out for you guys. Hope you're enjoying this. One thing that I want to get to before we head out for the week here is the concept of handcuffing your running backs. Now, I know a lot of people are...
Hold on, Matt. I didn't bring this up to you before.
Okay.
But I wanted to wait till we were doing this live. Last year, I had an odd theory to how you could do this. I was wrong. You were right. I will be the bigger man here on the podcast and say, just handcuff them like a normal human being and don't try to get cute like your boy sitting here in his chair and draft some other RB1 that doesn't work out. Take the handcuff. Listen to your friend here.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind it.
The only reason to me why the only players that you handcuff are true number one running backs that you're never going to take out of your lineup unless they're hurt or they're suspended or they're not showing up. Those number one running backs that you're going to play every week, no matter what the matchup is, you're going to keep them in your roster every week anyway. So you really don't really need as much depth at running back in those situations because one of your running back spots is locked up every week anyway. So if this player were to get hurt, like let's say Joe Mixon last year when he missed weeks 3 and 4, his backup, Giovanni Bernard, in those 2 games, he had 3 touchdowns, 130 rushing yards. He also caught 9 passes for 52 yards. So in those 2 games, he gave you RB1 production.
Right.
You're talking with the Le'Veon Bell, James Conner situation. We just talked about how James Conner erupted out of nowhere last year and just jumped into the RB1 category, all because Le'Veon Bell decided he didn't want to show up. And, the Steelers being who they are and how they use running backs, they just, here you go, kid. Here's 16, 20 touches a game. Have fun.
I know you got them on the opposite side of this mountain, but just look at your boys in Denver. Royce Freeman he was one of those rookie running backs this was the guy. People were drafting him 4th, 5th round, maybe 6th. If you'd have handcuffed him because you were uncertain, you ended up with Philip Lindsay, who was a starting running back,
1,300 rushing yards. Yeah,
you ended up. And it was the whole season.
Another great one is the Leonard Fournette situation. He missed weeks 2 and 3, and then he also missed weeks 5 through 8. Okay, some of them were from suspensions. Some of them he again missed week 13 because of suspension. And T.J. Yeldon came in, and you're looking like in week 5 when he played Kansas City, he had 110 total yards and a touchdown. You look at let's say week 7, he had almost 70 yards and a touchdown. So these guys for you are going to produce when those number one running backs are gone.
Nick Chubb started as a handcuff. Now
that's true.
I mean, look at honestly the top half of the running backs. They start as handcuffs,
right?
And that's the best way that you don't have to worry about the waiver wire.
I mean, even if you look at Dalvin Cook, he missed week 3, he missed 5 through 8.
This is
his
where
handcuff,
I was wrong,
Latavius Murray, right here, dude. I mean, week 6, he had a touchdown and 155 yards. Week 7, 2 touchdowns and 70 yards. Another touchdown in week 8 with 56 yards plus another 40 yards receiving. When these number one running backs go down, and you have a guy that is talented enough to jump into that spot and take on that number one running back work, to me it's invaluable. And especially when some of these handcuffs that you can get, and we're about to go through some of them. I mean, you can get these dudes in like the 10th, 11th, 12th round. Some of them you can even get with your last pick, and they could end up being monumentally valuable to you. And so I'm going to start with the first one. It's kind of an interesting situation just because there's a holdout, and it's a guy that is he's well known and he's really good, and I'm talking about Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm in a situation in a league where I joined last year. It's one of those standard leagues. I had to keep a guy, and the best player on the team was clearly Ezekiel Elliott, so I kept him. And this year I'm in the same situation, and I decided to keep him again because if he plays, let's say even if he only misses a couple games, that's a solid top 5 running back, and I'm going to take him, and I'm going to be happy whenever he does decide to play. But if he doesn't, right, in the last round of the draft, you can draft Tony Pollard, and if Zeke doesn't show up, it's going to be him and Alfred Morris. And this dude showed us when he was in college that he is very versatile. He can catch passes. He can line up wherever. So if there's no Zeke, I think Tony's going to get at least 15, 16 touches, whether it's 10 carries and maybe catch 5 or 6 passes, or it's split right down the middle. I think he's worth handcuffing your number one running back if, in fact, you think Zeke is a guy worth drafting in the first round right now with his holdout situation. His is a little different than Melvin Gordon's, but the next guy I want to talk about is Devontae Freeman. He missed 14 games last year. He's only played in all 16 games in one of his 5 seasons in the NFL so far.
Wasn't that too, by the way, when he started out as none other than the actual handcuff on that team?
To who?
Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman got a concussion and Devontae Freeman came in. Never
really?
forget. Yep.
I did not know that.
First game of the season, Tevin Coleman, or second game of the season. So he's Devontae Freeman, started as a handcuff.
So, I mean, Ito Smith, you can probably get him late. He's worth the backup because last year he split carries with Tevin Coleman when Devontae Freeman, what do you know, missed 14 games. So, if he were to miss time again and it's just the Ito Smith show, that's another high-powered offense with many weapons on the outside where it kind of makes it easier for those running backs where you're never going to see a stacked box. Another guy, as I mentioned earlier, Joe Mixon. Giovanni Bernard is falling. Every time I look at the ADP, he's further and further back. You can easily get him with one of your last picks. If you're going to go after Joe Mixon with your first or second pick, and you're going to start him every single week, you might as well hold one of your bench spots, keep his backup in case he gets hurt, you can play him. Another guy in the AFC North, the Nick Chubb situation. This one is kind of crazy. So, they had Chubb, they had Duke Johnson. They went out and they brought in Kareem Hunt, and you can say what you want about his situation, but he's going to be out for the first 8 games. They cut Duke Johnson in the middle of camp, so now it's just Chubb and Hilliard, their backup running back, Dontrell Hilliard. I mean, it's for the first 8 weeks, it's just the two of them. So if you draft Chubb in the first round and later in the draft, you're deciding between, random people like Jamison Crowder in the last round, you might as well take the handcuff to your number one running back. So if he misses time, he can step in and take those carries for him. Marlon Mack is somebody you might want to handcuff him to, but is his backup going to be good enough to actually do anything with those touches? And that's Jordan Wilkins I'm talking about, because Nyheim Hines is not his handcuff. Nyheim Hines is much more valuable as a pass catcher. I wouldn't consider him a handcuff. So the next one, probably a really important one, is Leonard Fournette. Obviously, last year he missed. So overall, he missed 2 games in his rookie season, and he missed 8 games last year because of injury or suspension. So again, another dude. He's going into his 3rd year, hasn't played all 16 games yet. He's probably one of the most physical runners, and he's so big. I doubt he'll ever play a full 16-game season. The way he runs, I don't think he'll ever last a full season.
I think you have to go actually pretty far back in his LSU career too. So like, if you're actually looking at consecutive seasons of football play, the dude hasn't played a full season of anything in like 6 to 7 years.
Right. With that being said, he is worth playing anytime he's active. He's probably he has over 60 career receptions so far in 2 seasons. That's pretty awesome. He's dominated in the red zone. He has 6 red zone touchdowns in 8 games last year, and he has the ability to carry the ball 20 times a game, no problem.
And now he's got BDN as his man captaining the ship. BDN
I know you're talking
in
about
Philadelphia lore, the legend himself. Let 9 stay in the city. It means a lot to him.
Yes. And then the only other guy on the roster to take carries from Fournette is Alfred Blue. So, if Fournette goes down, I don't see Alfred Blue being the handcuff. I see this rookie that they drafted this year, Raquel Armstead. He would probably be the one who would step into the majority of those carries. So if you draft
Alfred Blue wasn't able to be Lamar Miller's handcuff back then, so there's nothing going to change that.
Alfred Blue has never showed his ability to be a number one running back.
Which actually makes your point of this next kid, if you think about it, it makes it an even better reason that you should take him as a handcuff late. Because Alfred Blue, they're not going to pretend that he's going to come in and do anything, because he never has. They'll give this kid the chance.
Raquel Armstead, I think, is well worth a last-round pick if you are the one to draft Leonard Fournette. Another super important guy to handcuff is Dalvin Cook. Obviously, he's missed a lot of games. He was one of the most frustrating fantasy players last year, dealing with those hamstring issues all year. He tore his ACL his rookie season, and he missed 6 games. He definitely needs to be handcuffed. He is injury prone. But again, when he's active, you're going to start him, because a guy that's going to average 4.7 yards a carry, he's going to get 4 or 5 catches a game. He's involved in the pass game. They like him, they use him all over the place. So he's worth taking. He's worth starting every single week, and he's definitely worth handcuffing because he's shown that he is injury prone.
I think it really all goes back to what you said in the beginning, right? You take a handcuff for a guy that you plan on being your RB 1 or 2 every week. The handcuff is not meant to go on your roster, your starting roster. You don't want to have to start him. Right. You want him to sit on your bench, but when you do have to start him, you'll never be happier.
Exactly.
So if it's not somebody that you're going to rotate, not someone that you're going to try and stream.
And the other thing about this is, have you ever played somebody where you have, let's say, Leonard Fournette, and he goes down, and you're playing somebody, and they picked up T.J. Yeldon,
yes,
and you're playing T.J. Yeldon, you're playing your guy's backup, and he kills you for 20 points.
It's the absolute worst.
Yeah, so don't put yourself in that position. Handcuff your guy. Probably these last 2 guys that I think you absolutely must handcuff. One of them is for injury. One of them is a different situation. But Todd Gurley, he had such a weird year last year. He was a dominant running back. He was on pace to be like the number 1 running back of all time at one point. And then he just
poof.
Yeah,
Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
And the worst part is they didn't even tell you what was going on.
Yeah. We still don't know what's really going on.
Some arthritis knee. Right. Now you got to handcuff him. If you can draft Todd Gurley's handcuff before you pick Gurley, go for it. You take the handcuff in the first round, and then take Gurley in the second round, and then maybe you can be confident after that Harry Houdini act that they pulled last year.
They drafted Darrell Henderson in this offseason. I think they moved up to get him. Gurley's probably one of the most risky RB1s this season. Henderson might just be the most valuable handcuff in fantasy football. So if you draft Gurley wherever you get him, whether that's the first, second, third round, wherever he falls in your league, I definitely think you should get Henderson. And the last one here is the Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler situation. So, as of today, we're recording this on Wednesday night. Is that what today is?
Yeah, 8/20, August 21st, 2019. I'm going to give you we're going to timestamp it, 9:07 Eastern Standard Time.
They, apparently they're nowhere near settling this contract situation. Melvin Gordon is apparently fully ready to sit out until he gets the contract that he wants. So with that being said, Austin Eckler needs to be drafted.
100%. And his draft stock just went through the roof.
Yes. Whether you have Melvin Gordon or not, I think you should be targeting Austin Eckler because I think he's going to end up being one of the most valuable players, at least in reference to where he was drafted.
He's going to be going high, I would imagine, after the Le'Veon situation last year.
Yeah, and people are going to be freaked out.
And James Conner's success is very important to this whole equation. Austin Eckler did great last year. That's not as important, I think, as James Conner's success. Yeah. Because of that amount of success, Austin Eckler is going to be a very hot commodity.
So, even if you do go with Melvin Gordon, the draft that I was in, the first draft of my year so far, first of 7 or 8, I'm pretty sure Austin Eckler went before Melvin Gordon. So you might end up in a situation where Melvin Gordon could be available to you in the 8th, 9th round. Not a bad stash play for a guy that most likely will be back at some point. It's just, they got to figure that out. There's a whole bunch of unique handcuff situations, whether it's because of, the handcuff being very, very expensive in the case of Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis, the Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray handcuff situation. Murray's probably not one of the most expensive handcuffs here, but he is going to be expensive. There's a couple teams where it just doesn't make any sense to handcuff them, like in Denver. Who are you going to handcuff to Lindsey? Is it going to be Freeman? Is it going to be Booker? I don't know. You can figure that out if you want to. In New York, two very different situations, but two unique situations in themselves. If Saquon Barkley goes down, the Giants' offense is done. You can pretty much just put a wrap on them. I don't think either of his backups are worth handcuffing because Saquon is just such a huge part of that offense that if he goes down, you can pretty much just call it a day for the season. And then with the Jets, Le'Veon Bell, he fits the mold as a type of guy that you would want to handcuff, but because the Jets situation is so that they have a guy who is
just so bad.
They're not that bad.
They're so bad.
Bro, they're going to be decent this year. Don't give me that. Ty Montgomery, the converted wide receiver, 2 running back, he definitely has more value as a pass catcher. I don't think the Jets would value him as someone that they could give the ball to 15 times if Le'Veon Bell were to go down. I think Montgomery has showed in the couple years that he's been in the league that he's not durable enough to take all those carries, and I think the guy that would eventually take those carries from Bell if he were to get hurt would be McGuire or Powell. I don't know which one, so I'm not going to waste a draft pick on him. There's a couple other ones like the Sonny Michel James White, where we were talking about how valuable James White is because he catches so many passes.
See, at that point, though, I don't think you're talking handcuffs, right? Because you're really talking about RB2s and RB2A, right?
Yeah, it's just
a different game. Handcuffs are guys who are getting in the.
Those ones have like standalone value where it's not necessarily.
You could argue
Latavius
Murray might go as an RB2 to some people,
right? So that pretty much does it for handcuffs here. I know you had a different type of handcuff situation you wanted to talk about, so I'll let you get into that.
All right, I'm gonna take you through this one a little quicker because I know we're going for our new format of a condensed thing here. So
we're right about at an hour, so it's all good.
I'm gonna hit it right on the nail on the head. So we were discussing a new theory this year. Now you've heard me talk in the past, right? And you brought it up. You've done the same, where you're playing the waiver wire quarterback based on streaming. No matter what, you're still grabbing guys that are, what would you say, maybe 15 to 20. So this year, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do the quarterback handcuff. And the quarterback handcuff is where you take a guy in 10th or 11th round, maybe even a little higher. So I'm going to use Andrew Luck is not necessarily the best example. It's not a guy that you're going to set and forget. So when I say this scenario, if you have Deshaun Watson and you're looking at his schedule to try and figure out which games you should play him over somebody else, you're probably in last. You start him every game.
You start him every week.
Right, but if you go out and you're saying maybe getting a Matt Ryan, I had Matt Ryan last year. Matt Ryan was not the best player every game. He definitely wasn't. He was kind of like Adrian Peterson in terms of he had his games where he crushed it. He had his games where he forgot Julio Jones was a stud receiver.
Right.
But, so Matt Ryan, if you draft a Matt Ryan, you could then look at his schedule and see, he's got a tough matchup week 4 against Tennessee. He really doesn't have a good matchup week 7, week 8, at which point you're looking at the other quarterbacks on the board, and I noticed Ben Roethlisberger, a player you can get pretty late these days.
Right.
Ben's got some home games.
Yeah, and we all know that Big Ben's better at home than he is at
actually,
away.
Ben is an even better example to that point. So every year, Ben Roethlisberger has been the same Ben Roethlisberger since 2004 when he got drafted. Great at home. No good away. He'll have his games because he's a professional quarterback, and he had Antonio Brown and Juju, whatever. Most of the time, when he's away, you don't play Ben Roethlisberger. So if you have Ben Roethlisberger and, he's playing an away game, you know who another really good quarterback that matches up with him would be? Your boy, or my boy, Carson Wentz. Now, you might have to draft both of them a little higher, sure. Not Ben, but Carson. But at the end of the day, my point being, if you take two guys that are maybe anywhere between the 8th and 12th quarterbacks, which you can get pretty late,
right?
If you stream them appropriately against each other and their schedule, you actually could end up combining with a top 3 quarterback if you play to each of their strength of schedules.
Right.
If you would have done that with Ben Roethlisberger last year, I think it was maybe Phillip Rivers, you very easily could have had them both. I think a lot of people actually might have because
you just had to play the right guy that week.
Right. Anytime Ben was away, if you played Phillip, or I think it was Phillip, you would have ended up with like a top 3 quarterback. And if you can get to a top 3 quarterback, it's the same reason that Mahomes goes where he does.
Right.
That's a lot of points, and you don't miss the off weeks, so you're hitting a lot more consistency in terms of your points. So the quarterback handcuff this year, that's where I'm going.
Are you going to try that out in one of your leagues?
I'm absolutely. Well, first off, we all know I'm a homer, so I will be drafting Carson Wentz because his weapons are outrageous. Best offense in the NFL.
I don't know about that,
in
bro.
the NFL. But as a true fantasy man that I am, I know Carson does not. It hasn't happened that full season. I don't really want to get into this part because it's superstition. But to make myself better and to bolster my team, maybe I take a look at Ben Roethlisberger because I bet you could get him pretty late, or a Phillip Rivers in the 14th. Phillip Rivers always goes like 14th or 15th round.
And he always ends up as a top 10
every year.
12
I
quarterback.
never get it. Every single year, Phillip Rivers is one of the last guys taken and always kills it.
He'll never finish as like a top 5, but he'll never finish as anything less than top 12.
Which is why if you did this theory and had Carson Wentz and were playing Phillip Rivers on his stronger matchups where you did get that top 5 production for him, because it's now not being offset by the down
I get
games.
it. That makes sense, and I like it.
And Carson Wentz's top games are top 3. So when you start doing that correctly, you could definitely...
See, for me, it's really hard for me to take 2 quarterbacks. I'm always of the mindset to only have one quarterback, and thus I need to drop him and either stream QBs, or if I just need to pick up a guy for his, during his bye week. But I mean, in that situation, if you can lay it out before the season starts and say, these are the weeks I'm playing quarterback 1, and this is the weeks that I'm playing quarterback 2, and you know that these matchups are going to be good. Obviously, sometimes in the beginning of the season, a matchup may look good, and then by week 10, it's not a very good matchup anymore. And obviously, it works the same way on the other side. So, it's definitely a strategy that I would love to. If you do it this year in one of your leagues, let's dissect it, and each week we can really make sure we pick the right quarterback for you.
I'm going to do it. I'm notorious. I'm on record on this thing saying I never draft a quarterback. In fact, I've been the person that said I take them 16th because I find that you can stream them all right. But this year, my goal, it's going to not be name, and we'll track it and we'll pick it here, get in the top 5 of points each week.
Right.
I'm going to draft the 2 quarterbacks. I'm not going to be drafting, and on the record, and we'll close it up, I will not be taking the Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to take the locks at the top. We're talking rounds 10 on,
Right.
maybe 8
No
on.
Drew Brees, no Deshaun Watson, no Baker Mayfield.
Nope. It's going to be like your Carson Wentz, your Ben Roethlisbergers, your Philip Rivers. You know, all right, it won't be Carson because I live in Philadelphia.
Carson's,
he's going to be going with, but your Lamar Jacksons, you know, Kyle Murray's going to be a candidate.
I'm super excited for Lamar Jackson. I can't wait for him.
On the air, we will make the pick. The next one, we'll dilute. We'll see where we're at. We'll track it.
Yeah. So next week, hopefully, we'll have time to do an episode where we're going to be talking about. We're going to try and get into a whole bunch of stuff. We got a group of tight ends that we want to talk about. We're going to talk about some injured players from last year and, you know, them coming back from those injuries this season. We're going to talk about coaching changes. I'm going to hopefully be able to dive into some matchups and see which matchups, like we were just saying, which matchups that look like they're going to be good ones this season, which ones look like they're going to be tough ones. So thank you for joining us for this warm-up first episode of the 2019
I can't believe you used the word
season.
warm-up while we're sitting up here sweating.
It's got to be like 95 degrees.
This is a true warm-up to the NFL season.
We're signing out here, and again, thank you. We'll see you guys next week.
You have been listening to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. For more episodes and information, follow us on social media and tune in every week. Beers and Bruisers is available on Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Alexa, Reach TV, or your favorite podcast service. Beers and Bruisers is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. To find out more about this and other great shows on our network, visit us online at hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app today. Fantasy football is fun, but gambling addiction destroys lives. If you or someone you love suffers from gambling addiction, please do not be afraid to seek help. The National Council on Problem Gaming operates a national problem gambling helpline network. Contact them today at 1-800-522-4700. Thank you for tuning in to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. Please remember to drink responsibly and always look for your man downfield.